It isn't a platformer if you can't move. Like, imagine if Mario just stood there while a Goomba ran at him and just ran him over. That isn't fun. Movement is fun. And after a few weeks of effort, today I'm going to share how I created 6 different movement mechanics for my game. So what did I add and how did I do it? Jumping. A good jump is very important, and the standard Unreal Engine jump is very, very bad. The reason it's trash is because our character just goes through the motions. It's going to be the same length of jump each time, and the player cannot do much to change this. For my game, I want the player to be the master of their jumping's destiny, and I was able to give my player control by throwing together some extra logic. Let me show you. Since our player is going to inherit from Epic's custom character, we get to use everything that they made for us. And because C++ inheritance rules say that I can change anything to fit my desires, we're going to abuse that so that we can have our own custom jumping and stopping jumping methods. So if I go and declare this jump and stop jumping methods within my custom class and state that I want to override them, then we can start having some fun. Jump is honestly just going to be used later, but stop jumping is important now. Stop jumping is a method that tells Unreal that the character is sick of rising up for their jump. This is what gives our character that nice arc, but I want to cut that arc short. I'm going to use the base functionality from the super class, or the character class, while also tripling my gravity so that our player falls faster. And since I'm going to set it up such that this method is called whenever I release the jump button, this is going to lead to a great fast fall for our character. This level of control is really satisfying for the player, or at least it's been satisfying while I've tested it so far. Now let's move and talk about wall jumping. My idea here was to track with a boolean if our character was ever attached to a wall I deemed worthy of wall jumping. This meant creating a new collision channel and using the capsule component's collision to filter out if we're hitting walls or not. The actual wall jump is actually easy to set up. This finterp2 function is great for simulating a sticky wall surface. And once I get around to actually animating a character and throwing smoke and effects around, it's gonna look great. The actual jump is the only tricky bit because the character jump does not work if our character is not firmly planted on the ground. I worked around this by using logic that just says, launch me if I jump while I'm on a wall. You're gonna notice that this type of Boolean logic is going to be something that comes up again and again during the videos, and that's because my brain just works in a very particular kind of way. The next thing to implement is our dash. A lot of platformers have a dash, and I love the feeling of Hollow Knight and Celeste's dashes, so I wanted to make my own. The long-term goal would be to have this dash be one of the player's attacking options, and so long as they are hitting an enemy, they can keep on dashing. This of course led to my code taking on a few more booleans so I can track different states, and since I apparently love gravity manipulation, I just allowed the character to float in space while the dash is happening. Linking that behavior with a magical line that tells us if we're hitting an enemy so we can reset our dash leads to a behavior that makes me pretty happy. It's still rough around the edges specifically, but I need to finish some modeling and animation work before I can alter it any further. But both my jump and dash are suffering from a certain issue. Have you spotted it? In both cases, we need frame perfect inputs in order to pull off continuous jumps or dashes. This is because I have not implemented an input buffer yet. The theory behind an input buffer is to hold a player's action for a set amount of time, so that if the player ends up being freed up to use that action, we can just take this older input and immediately accept it. This means our player can pull off different combos and always feels like their inputs are being accepted. Next, I wanted our character to be able to crouch and then slide across the floor. Crouching as a whole is easy because the character class has crouch behavior that I can just steal. Sliding is also easy because I can just dash in a straight line if our player is currently crouching. Where this gets complicated is deciding when our player should crouch. Do you think that crouch should be triggered off of a button press where we're just triggering a crouched state? Or do you think that the crouch should be more dynamic based off of the direction that our player is inputting on their left stick? There's pros and cons to both approaches here, but which do you prefer? Let me know in the comments, I'm genuinely curious. But with that debate aside, the last major movement option I want is a slide jump. Specifically, I want a larger jump to take place if the player is sliding on the ground first. Now, obviously I was able to implement this using both Boolean logic and similar triggers to our other jumping mechanics, but once this one successfully compiled, I was really seeing the light. This is going to be very fun to use in levels. And ultimately, that's the goal of all of our movement mechanics, isn't it? For them to be fun. I can only imagine how many different tweaks and changes that all of these mechanics are going to go through while I'm creating the bulk of the game, but for right now, this is a good basis for me to start from. What other types of mechanics would you like to see me include in my game? I'm pretty open to considering all ideas. I'll at least give them a read. Subscribe to this channel for more Unreal Engine and game updates, and click on the video on your screen right now to go and see where I made the 2D template that I'm using for my current project.